Why, hello there, friends. Thanks for clicking on this video. And in a moment or two, at least for you, we'll be out at the shooting range. For me, a couple hours are gonna go by. I'm trying to get part of this filmed right now. I wasn't gonna film this just simply because I'm weighing these two gunpowders out. One of them is the blended red cedar juniper, 7.5 grams of red cedar, 7.5 grams of juniper, and it was all mixed. And I'm going to also be testing the same thing with my alder and cherry. In the process of doing this, I discovered something, and because I discovered this, I kind of want to backtrack just a little bit on the previous video that I had done when I was burning just the red cedar, and I weighed it out and I said it occupied like almost 90 grains by volume, even though I had 70 grains by weight. I discovered something this morning that I would like to share with you, because that may not be totally accurate. Okay, so what I have right here now is 70 grains balanced out with my red cedar juniper gunpowder mix. Okay, I'm going to pour that into powder measurer, settle it, and then level it off. Okay, as you can see, I'm just a little tall, so I could go down just a little bit. But if you can see the scale, the numbers on the measuring rod here, it's pointing at about 85, 86 grains by volume. Okay, so if I were to do a video, I would say, well, look at this. This gunpowder is a lot lighter because the volume is not actually equaling the weight. Okay, so this morning when I was out here doing this, I had a little hard time getting the plunger to move up. Okay, so what I did is I took the whole thing completely apart and I run some cleaning fluid to get all of that powder residue off of the inside of this. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I discovered. Now bear in mind, we're just, I would guess, maybe 85 or so, maybe 86 grains, even though it weighs 70 grains on the scale. So you unthread the bottom screw, loosen up the side. I'm going to show you right here. There's the plunger right there. I did not know it, but the plunger also threads up. You see that? Now, watch what happens when I thread this down and put that same amount of gunpowder back in this flask. It's like putting a square peg in a round hole. Here we go. Alright. Thread the stop on. Kind of lock that in place. Pour the gunpowder back in. Settle it. And level it off. I'll go just a hair above it. Can you see the mark now? It's a lot closer to 70 grains. I don't know if you guys can make that out, but it's a lot closer than 70 grains. So, for you guys that are making homemade gunpowder and you're doing what I'm doing, maybe from time to time you might want to check the plunger seat in your powder measurers so that you're actually getting a number that's more closer to what it's weighing out right here in the scale. Now, with that being said, I would expect, at least I would have expected this number to be a lot closer to 70 grains, because the specific gravity of the red cedar and the juniper is about 48, with the specific gravity, 0.48. So I would have expected that to be closer to, other than the extra 10 grains. And this extra 10 grains that I keep talking about, you need, is that because your seat is threading up and you're getting a different reading on your scale, on your powder measure here. There we go. So I'm going to do the same thing with the alder and cherry blended. I've already measured it once, but I did not take this one apart and make sure that that seat is securely threaded down. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to show you that plunger is threaded up. Or I shouldn't say the plunger, but the seat, I guess, if you will. Of course, if you're pushing it up, it is a plunger, isn't it? Determine for yourself how you want to describe that. But you can see that that's threaded up. So, I'm going to put 70 grains of the blended alder cherry and see how much, if it's going to be closer to 70 grains than what I've been typically describing. And just for full context, I had already done this with the cherry and the alder, and I got real close to 80 grains by volume as it equaled the weight. And then secondary, I went to this powder measure, and that's when I decided I needed to clean this out, and I realized that that seat, that plunging seat, was loose. So give me a few moments here to get this weighed out, and we'll put it back into this powder measure and see where the volume truly sets. So I got it leveled out. You can see, hopefully see just how close to the top the powder sets, and if you can read the gauge, the measuring numbers were at about what, about 75. Okay, now I would have naturally expected this to weigh a little lighter, just simply because, as I showed in a previous video, the cherry has a specific gravity of 0.50, and the alder, I was told and read on forums, not forums, but the scales for the specific gravities, the wood charts, that the white or red alder is supposed to be like 0.37, which is lighter than the willow at 0.39. But when I did my testing and measuring in my glass containers, this was actually a little heavier than the willow, and I guess probably 41, 42 maybe, something like that. But by comparison to the two, the blended gunpowder with the red cedar and the juniper both having a specific gravity of around 0.48, it would have been heavier, which means it would occupy less. This gunpowder being a little lighter by weight and volume because of the alder, I would have expected it to weigh a little bit less. No, I shouldn't say weigh, but occupy a little bit more volume-wise in the powder measure. And it actually does. Maybe by about 5 grains. So if you guys are doing this, you might want to bear that in mind to double check the inside of your powder measures, so that if you really want to throw a true 70, 80 grains, that seat is firmly in place. In fact, I might even take these back apart after I do my shooting and put a little bit of that blue, what's it called, Loctite on it, just to keep it in place. So anyhow, I'm going to go out No, actually, I'm going to go in my shop and we're going to do a burn test on the boards, as I typically do, and see how these two gunpowders compare with a burn test. So if this powder measure is correct, I have 30 grains of the gunpowder with the blended charcoal of cherry and alder. That went up PDQ. Let me get you a close-up of the block. Well, as you can see, it's pretty clean. I mean, there is charcoal residue. I mean, you're going to see that no matter what. But it's pretty dry looking. And unlike the red cedar by itself the other day, you don't see larger pieces of the KNO3 left behind. So I would say that that's pretty clean. And as I've tested the cherry and the alder separately in previous videos, determined that it's a clean burning gunpowder. So let me get reset up, and now we'll do the red cedar pet bedding blended with the juniper. So here we go with the Eastern red cedar pet bedding and juniper charcoals blended. Now, just in case anybody is curious, I do sand these blocks clean in between each testing. So here we go. So that went up pretty quick. Took a moment to get the flame to the gunpowder, but let me give you a close-up of the block, and I'll describe what I see. Okay, there's the block. Give you a little bit of sunlight on it. You can see that there is a little bit of a smoky residue. Compared to the other gunpowder, there wasn't any. And I can tell you, there's a lot of little white pieces of what I've continuously been describing as the KNO3, but for the most part, it's pretty dry, and I would say it's fairly clean. And I would expect it to be a little cleaner because I blended the juniper charcoal into it, and I've showed before and I've attested to on this channel that juniper burns pretty clean. So for the benefit of those that hadn't seen the previous burn test that I made with the gunpowder with the Eastern red cedar pet bedding, I'm going to repeat that here. And you have two examples of gunpowders that burn pretty quick. I'm going to show you how much slower this actually burned because the pet bedding has got a lot of the sapwood in it. You can see it took a little longer for that to go up, but let me show you the block. Now, as you can see, smoky residue is there. And I don't know how well the camera's picking it up, so I'm going to try to rotate the block, but you can see that there's a whole lot more of the fine white flakes left behind than in any of the other burns. And I'm really hoping that you guys can see that clearly as the sun's reflecting off it and you're looking at it from different angles. From where I stand, it's very, very obvious. Now imagine after 3 or 4 shots of shooting this in your gun barrel that when you eventually start loading it, all these little flakes are falling down to the bottom, and especially if you're shooting a flintlock, it's going to plug up your touch hole. Just some food for thought, friends. All right, I'm going to go get my shooting range set up, and we'll go do some more testing. .1644. 1620. 1603. 1624. I think I forgot to hit the record button when I shot that, but the number is 1585. 1557. 'I took my time on that because I could see the heat, you know, coming up off the top of the gun barrel. So I had a hard time focusing in on the bullseye. That's my excuse, at least. Let me get you the number. 1548. 1581. All right, I'm going to go pull the target, try to find the patches, and I'll give you my opinion in the shop. So before we step into the shop, you might want to see what the lock looks like after that round of shooting with the Eastern Red Cedar pet bedding blended with my juniper. And there's the lock. Now my opinion is yeah, it's a little dirty. There's some gritty stuff on top, which what I would surmise to be the KN03 from the Eastern Red Cedar, and I showed that earlier in the video, burning that on the block. But I really don't have, I'll say, that really heavy, greasy look to it, as I did the other day when I shot the gunpowder made from the pet bedding solely. But yeah, I can look at the top of the pan and I can see, you know, those little chunks of KN03 that came out of, in my opinion, the touch hole as the ignition was doing its thing. So anyhow, let me go in the shop and I'll give you some numbers and give you a close-up of the targets and conclude this discussion. Okay. Did you find that as fun as I did? Just to refresh everybody's memory, and for those that hadn't seen the previous testing I did with the Eastern Red Cedar pet bedding, this was the target, 5 shots, 70 grains by weight, and I had stated it was 90 grains by volume, but reflecting back earlier in the video, I had showed you that push plate was up. So that would be an inaccurate statement, and that's why I clarified that earlier in this video. But even as such, the 5-shot average was 1534.2 with a spread of 97. Wasn't impressed at all. Then I did another round of Eastern Red Cedar Heartwood, and I explained in the previous video that here in New Mexico, what they call Eastern Red Cedar has more of a purplish colored heartwood. And what did I get with a 5-shot average? 1609. There's the grouping with a spread of 78. So that obviously did a lot better with the Heartwood Red Cedar. Now, how do we do today? Well, the first grouping I shot, I collected some patches. I'm going to show those. This was the Alder Cherry Blended Charcoal. There's the group. 5-shot average was 1602.8 with a spread of what? 75. There's the target. That was the Cherry Alder Blended. I collected, I only found 4 of the patches. Now what I did this time around is I used 20 thousandths pillow ticking. And you guys can observe for yourself, that's not all that dirty. There's one patch. There's another patch. It's not all that dirty. And the last 2 patches, and they're not shredded up like the other ones were the other day when I shot just the gunpowder made from the Eastern Red Cedar. Now, how did I do with the Eastern Red Cedar Juniper Blended? Well, I didn't get as great a feet per second. The average was 1583 with a spread of 76. So the spread was just even with the Cherry Alder Blended. But there's the target and there's the grouping. And I had already surmised that the juniper was going to help make that Eastern Red Cedar pet bedding burn a little cleaner, just because I've showed quite often on this channel that my junipers burn real clean and they seem to be very consistent. Okay, and here are the patches, and this time I used the 20 thousandths white patches, and you can see, hopefully you can see that that's pretty darn clean. It's another patch I picked up. That's pretty clean. And the third patch, pretty clean. Yeah, they're a little shredded and frayed on the edges, but you know, and I don't know if this really is going to make a difference to anybody, but I like using a little oversized patch. I know a lot of guys make their patches the same diameter of what the top of their flats are on the barrel. I actually go beyond that because from time to time the ball goes in a little crooked and you don't quite catch the edge of the patch. So I make my patches a little bit bigger, and I do hand cut all my patches. And maybe that's why, you know, some of these are really looking, you know, like they're frayed. Well, you got to remember, when it's spinning, all those fibers are working themselves out of the patching. Just like if you was to take a pair of denim or even duck cloth, cut yourself a square patch, big enough square patch, put it in your washing machine, and what happens? All the edges fray, and then they all clump up. So to me, for those guys that want to say, oh, I can reuse my patch, please go tell that to someone else. because when you take denim or even duck cloth and wash it before you make clothing out of it, even in the washing machine, the edges fray. You gotta remember, this is spinning. And all those fibers on the edge are going to come undone. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, I was pretty impressed with the Red Cedar Juniper blended as far as it grouped, but obviously the feet per second quite a bit different with the Alder Cherry blend. And that's what I saw the last time when I made the gunpowder with the Alder and the Cherry and ran those through my chronograph. They actually did a little bit better, you know, than what this Juniper Red Cedar blended gunpowder was. And I am tracking everything, so you know, in time I'm going to have a whole lot of numbers to convey to you friends. So anyhow, I guess that's really all I have to say about that. It's a little past lunchtime right now, so I'm going to have lunch. And then, as you all know, I got a gun to go clean. So thanks for watching. And I hope that if you find this information of value, that you would be willing to share this with your bestest of friends. Bye.